Today we're going to be talking about cognitive dissonance, which is a communication theory developed by Leon Festinger. And this is really a communication theory that's about persuasion. It's about how do you get people to change the way that they're acting or they're thinking. Before we go ahead and we start these slides, I want to ask a few questions here that illustrate some of the issues that are at debate here in cognitive dissonance theory. First question is, do you believe that world hunger is a problem? Secondly, do you believe it's fair to wear clothes that are made in sweatshops, right? Sweatshops being factories in other countries where people work for very little money, $1 a day or so in horrible conditions, 12 hours a day, etc. Do you believe it's okay to torture animals? Now, I'm guessing that to these questions you answered no to all of them, right? The question that we need to ask ourselves is if we feel this way about these issues, right? If we think that it's a shame that world hunger exists or that it's unfair, right? Or that we think it's unfair to wear clothes that other people have made for so little money, right, under terrible conditions. Or it's okay to torture animals. I mean, the majority of us do not do much to try to stop world hunger, right? The majority of us do not check the clothes that we wear to make sure that they're not made in sweatshops, that they're made in fair, equitable workplaces. And the majority of us don't check to make sure that the meat that we eat, for example, comes from animals who are raised ethically, etc. If these are all things that we believe, how is it that our behavior and our belief can be at such odds? Why can we believe something on one hand and sorry about that, my phone just rang. So the question is, why can we have such a disparate between our behavior and our belief, right? Cognitive dissonance is what we refer to as a distressing mental state people feel when they find themselves doing things that they know don't fit in with what they believe, right? So you might have experienced a bit of cognitive dissonance about being asked those questions, right? And I mean, that's fairly unobtrusive, but I could probably prod those questions more and more to make you feel a higher degree of cognitive dissonance, more of a distressing mental state of being forced to confront the idea of your actions not matching what it is that we believe. I want to hesitate and say here, right, I'm not being moralistic when I'm saying this, right? I'm no better at these things than anyone else is. And so I'm just asking these questions to try to illustrate the theory. Now, the theory of cognitive dissonance is interested in the basic need that we have to avoid this dissonance and try to establish some consistency, right? And what we're interested here in cognitive dissonance is how it is, right? What strategies we use to kind of mesh our the distance between our behavior and our belief. Cognitive dissonance was developed in 1950s or so, and Festinger used the example of a UFO doomsday cult that was popular at the time. So there was this cult that the aliens had told the prophets of this cult that the world was going to end in 1956. And so these people did all the things that you're supposed to do when the world is going to be ending, right? They sell their stuff, they get ready, they go to a mountaintop, etc. And 1956 comes and goes, and obviously the world didn't end. Now, what we would think would be a reasonable thing to believe in that situation would be to say, okay, obviously we were wrong. But Festinger was interested in how this group was able to really smooth that over a little bit. So instead of this narrative of them being wrong, they had this narrative of the aliens had spared them thanks to the diligence of this particular group, right? Not is it that the aliens don't exist or that our prophet is a whack job, but instead we say, well, look how great these aliens are, and it's a demonstration of how faithful we are. They chose to change their belief, right? To negotiate their belief slightly. So it could match up with their behavior, so they could keep going about with this social structure, because if you thought this was wrong, right, the group must dissipate all of a sudden. Well, this allows the group to stay cohesive, stay together, but also to not have to deal with the fact that you were wrong. So how is it that we go about reducing our cognitive dissonance? Festinger posits 3 different ways that we do this. how it is we go about reducing that dissonance, which is that distressing mental state, so we can live with ourselves, basically. Because everyone does things that they know are wrong. Everyone acts in ways that aren't in accordance to their belief. So how is it that we're able to sleep with ourselves? Well, the first he talked about is selective exposure, which is avoiding information that's likely to increase dissonance. A couple examples here that I can think of, right? I don't know if anyone has had this example going back to world hunger, but sometimes, late at night, maybe you're watching TV and you're flipping through the channels, and you come across those channels that have the pictures of starving people on them, hungry, right? And for only $35 a month, you can provide a child food, etc. Well, whenever I see those channels, I have this tendency to really quickly hit the remote and go to the next channel, right? There's a reason why I don't want to be confronted with that. That's an idea of selective exposure, of not wanting to confront something that's in front of you, because by getting that information, by being exposed to that information, it's only going to increase my dissonance, only going to make me feel worse about myself in that situation. Another example is I remember being back in college. Sometimes I would want to go out maybe to the bar with my friends, and I would know that my financial situation perhaps wasn't the greatest. What I would do sometimes is I would choose to not check my bank balance or my credit card balance before I went out. Because the idea is, right, if I have to look at that pitiful number before I go out and have friends, I know I'm going to experience a high amount of cognitive dissonance. I'm going out with my friends anyways, but I choose to not want to know that information in that specific situation. Now, this only works if you're able to anticipate a message, right? And there's also, this is a lesson used for people who are interested in substance abuse interventions, for example, right? Where what sometimes people who are engaged in substance abuse do is they try to engage in selective exposure, not to see how destructive their patterns actually are. Well, what this theory posits is that, right, like, that's why you surprise people for a substance intervention, right? You don't say, hey, come on, we're going to get a bunch of people together, we're going to talk about your problem. No, what you do is you kind of spring it on someone so they don't know it's coming. Because if they know it's coming, then they're able to engage in selective exposure. The next method by which we use to reduce cognitive dissonance is called post-decision rationalization, which is reassurance. Reassurance in a decision that's already been made. Festinger argued that we have a tendency to go back and revise information, right, to fit into decisions that we've already made. So an example of this would be something like maybe you buy something that you know you shouldn't have bought. Well, what I've done before when I bought an expenditure, something that was too expensive, right, is I might go online to read the good reviews about the product after I do it. What that does is that's post-decision rationalization. I've already bought it, so it's post-decision. And what it is, I'm rationalizing that. I'm putting into a narrative that makes sense where my belief and my behavior I don't have to be confronted with that dissonance there. And the more important the issue, the more dissonance you're going to have, and the more likely it is that you're going to engage in post-decision rationalization. Similarly, the more difficulty there is in reversing the decision, the more likely you are to experience a post-decision rationalization. Our last one here is this minimal justification for action. And actually what I'm doing is going to be right back. We'll talk about this one in a minute because I think this will take us more than 2 minutes. I'd rather just start at the next video.